Hi, you're listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick, a life and success coach who specializes in helping working professionals and entrepreneurs overcome imposter syndrome. If you feel like you're not as smart, capable, or worthy as you actually are, and that someone is going to find you out, you've come to the right place. I use social and cognitive psychology, neurolinguistic programming, and somatic healing to take my clients from imposter to empowered so they can go after the success that they want and feel worthy of it too. Let's dig in. Hello to my fraud squad. Welcome back to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Jill Perrick. You can find me on Instagram at your coach Jill. And when you're listening to this, it's the second weekend of January. Second week, not second weekend. But next week, I am going to Mexico. I'm going to Mexico after 2 years of not being able to leave the country. My fiance Dustin and I are going to Mexico and we are so excited. We actually have not been on a vacation together alone in, I want to say, like 5 or 6 years, maybe almost 7 years. We went to Wilmington, North Carolina together for my first One Tree Hill convention back in 2015. So yeah, almost 7 years, which is nuts. And we are so excited to spend some of that alone time together and just eat good food and drink and hang out. And I'm going to read all the books and relax and tan and swim in the amazing pool that's at our Airbnb condo. And we're just really excited. We're going to take all the precautions. At this point, hopefully I have my booster. So I am super excited to just lay in the sun and relax. I mean, I have been on vacation, but it's only been out to Alberta, which is another Canadian province if you're not Canadian. The first time in the summer to see family, and then the second time for my brother's wedding, which was at the end of November. And the reason why we haven't been on a vacation together alone in so long is just because I spend a lot of time with my family, and as does he. And usually when my family's like, hey, like we're gonna go on this vacation or whatever, we're like, okay, we'll go. So it's usually always like a family affair. But this time we are going together, just the two of us, and we are really excited to spend that time together, especially because we got engaged on my birthday last year, and now we're coming up on my 30th birthday in March, and our first engagement anniversary. So I'm also like gonna start wedding planning with my mom because she used to be an event planner at her work. It was actually the same organization that I worked at for 6.5 years. She's been there for like 35 years now and is gonna retire at some point, but she was an event planner for them for a long time. So she is helping me plan the wedding. Dustin's just along for the ride because I'm a control freak and so is she. So it's gonna be fun. But honestly, wedding planning stresses me the fuck out. Like, it's so overwhelming. But I am excited to start and just nail down a date. It's gonna be in 2023, so we're really excited about that. But yeah, that's just what's been going on this front. And today I want to talk to you about perfectionism and imposter syndrome because I know so many of you are self-identifying as perfectionists, and I know that I definitely do. And perfectionism is just that need to have things go a certain way, because I think that we can all agree that we know that we can't ever be perfect. And here's the kicker, okay? The reason why perfectionism fucks us up so much is because we have this internal belief like nothing I ever do is perfect, but you're striving for perfection, and that means that you are colossally disappointed by everything that you do and the things that you produce because your brain is expecting perfection. And when it's not that way, you get disappointed in yourself, or you think it could have been better, or you think this wasn't my best, it could have been better. Especially if you are neurodivergent, you have a very all or nothing type of brain, and a lot of the time when you do something or produce something, you're telling yourself it's not good enough. And sometimes you even have executive dysfunction, because I know, because I have ADHD, like getting started on things can be really hard for me, and the thoughts don't make it any easier. So procrastination and resistance is really common when it comes to being a perfectionist and getting things done, because you're already telling yourself it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be good enough. So a lot of people either produce the thing and are stressed out the entire time and are never satisfied with the outcome, or the other half of the people are not even getting started on it and are procrastinating and have so much resistance to getting things done. Like, for example, if you have an online business and you know that you have to show up and like talk on stories or like upload Instagram posts or something like that, you could experience a lot of resistance to doing that, in terms of not even being able to do a caption without it taking for fucking ever because you're trying to make it perfect, but perfect doesn't exist. Or you could be on the other side of the spectrum with this, in terms of being like, you're doing it, but you're so unhappy with the result and you're telling yourself the entire time, this isn't good, nobody's gonna like it. So you're just really beating yourself up. And the reason why I talk about perfectionism so much is because perfectionism is the armor that protects deeply rooted imposter syndrome. Because if you do everything right, you won't be found out. And I want you to really sit with that for a second, in that, like, you probably feel like as long as you do X, Y, and Z in the right way, and yes, I said Z because I am Canadian and that is the only correct way to say it. So if you do X, Y, and Z in a certain way, then people won't discover your secret or your crusher. Dr. Valerie Young, who wrote The Secrets of Successful Women, I believe, it was one of the first things I read about imposter syndrome, and I am in the midst of writing my own imposter syndrome book, so I'm super excited about that. Who knows how fucking long it's going to take me, because I have a lot of thoughts, and here's another thing, guys. It's coming in. Another neurodivergent quirk that I have is that, like, I would put things off because I would tell myself, you will have more information later. You will know more later. And then if you do something and put it out into the world now, then you could acquire more good information and it could have gone into that project. So if you relate to that, I just want to let you know that as painful as it is to just do things, even if you don't know everything at the time, or if you're telling yourself you don't know everything at the time, that is the only way to get anything done and to build your business and to build your brand and to be somebody who gets shit done, because you will truly never know enough. You will truly never know enough. You will truly never be able to have all of the information and all of the experience and all of the knowledge enough, because if you keep telling yourself that, you will never fucking take action in your life. Okay, so that was a little off tangent, but we were talking about perfectionism, and how if you do everything right, then you won't be found out. And because if you do fuck something up, then you would be outed, and then somebody would see that you're not as capable or as confident or as smart as you are pretending to be. And if you do make a mistake, then everyone would see that you're a fraud. Now I remember what I was talking about. So with Dr. Valerie Young, and she wrote that book, The Secrets of Successful Women. I'm probably butchering that. I think it's a different title. But anyways, one of the first things I read about imposter syndrome, and she talked about having a crusher. And that crusher is like that one identifiable thing. It could be one, it could be more, where like you would feel like such a piece of shit if somebody were to figure it out about you. So for me, it was my stutter. And for you, it could be a number of different things. But even if it's just one, or if it's like three or something like that, if you have something where like you are so afraid of somebody to find it out, then you try to be perfect in all the other ways. And like, let's not get too deep into my trauma here with my stutter, but like I used to tell myself, if I'm perfect in every other way, when people find out that I stutter, like it won't matter because I'm perfect in every other way. So I try to like look perfect, be the smartest person in the room, be the hottest person in the room, unsuccessfully. But I would want to be everything. So when people found out about this big flaw that I had, because I saw it as such a flaw, they would either not think it's a big deal, or it wouldn't be as big of a blow, you know? Like, they would probably think I'm still stupid or whatever. This is what I would tell myself, right? They would probably think it was like so ridiculous, and like a big deal that I stuttered, but as long as I was perfect in every other way, it wouldn't matter. So this was the dialogue that I had in my head about my speech impediment, in terms of being like, this being my crusher is my speech impediment. And when people found it out, then I would feel like shit about myself. So I want you to think about this, because this is about perfectionism, but like I said, it's covering up your imposter syndrome. It's covering up the fact that you are afraid that if somebody sees that you're not perfect, you either will have love taken away from you, attention, validation, or you're afraid that you're going to feel a certain way. And I know you guys have heard me talk about this before, but whenever we're afraid of something happening, it's usually because we're afraid to feel a certain way. We're afraid to feel emotions. So if you are a perfectionist, you're afraid that somebody is going to discover something about you, and then they're going to realize you're not perfect. And if they discover you're not perfect, then they're going to have thoughts about you, about your intelligence, or about your work ethic, or about your capabilities. And then you would believe that to be true, because at the root of it, imposter syndrome is like truly believing that you're not good enough, and truly believing that you have flaws, and that there are things about you that aren't good enough. So if you are trying to be the perfect coach on Instagram, and somebody were to, like, let's say you were working with a client and you missed their message on Slack or on Voxer, and you didn't respond for like a week or 2 weeks, and then they're like, hey, you never responded to me, I really needed your help. You'd be like, oh my God, like, oh, I knew I was a terrible coach. Like, they're going to see that I'm a bad coach, and then my business is going to fail, and all of these things. Like, you're already thinking that about yourself. You're already thinking like, I'm not a good coach, and this just confirms it, and now they see it, and now I feel this way about myself. Okay, so we're getting super into like the deep roots of this, but I just want you to know that when you are identifying as a perfectionist, it's really important to look under it. It's like, but what if you weren't perfect? Because we already know that nobody is perfect. We are all flawed human beings. But like, what does the perfectionism symbolize to you? What is the perfectionism hiding? And I don't want that to sound like, what's your perfectionism hiding? Are you hiding some big, deep, dark secret? But it's important for you to look at it in terms of like, yeah, like, what am I afraid of people saying about me if I'm not perfect? What am I afraid of people thinking about me if I'm not perfect, or if I fuck this up? And it usually will come back to that crusher. It usually will come back to thoughts that you have about yourself that are uninvestigated, that are thoughts that you probably have about yourself from your past or your childhood that you're just not allowing yourself to work through. And you know, here on this podcast and in my containers, like, that is everything. Those thoughts and beliefs about yourself that you are so afraid to face are the key to unlocking your worthiness, are the key to unlocking your own self-acceptance. You know, perfectionism also tells us that we're not worthy of love until we do things a certain way, or until things are perfect. But again, it's unattainable. And then we constantly tell ourselves we're not worthy of love. So we have to do more, be more, know more in order to be worthy of love. So perfectionism and imposter syndrome are so deeply intertwined. And I truly believe that when somebody is talking about being a perfectionist, like, under that very layered topic, we are looking at imposter syndrome. We are looking at unworthiness in terms of feeling like, I'm not good enough. So in order for me to cover up the fact that I'm not good enough, I'm going to be perfect in all of these other ways. And again, I want to bring it back to the fact that I have a stutter, and I had undiagnosed ADHD for my entire life up until I was 29 and a half years old. Up until just like October is when I got fucking diagnosed, October 2021. So I had been suffering internally for so long, and I would definitely identify as a perfectionist, and I didn't realize how intertwined that was with my own imposter syndrome. And once I started working through my imposter syndrome and working through that unworthiness, I was able to realize that, oh, my relationship to perfectionism is so much different now. It is so different now because I am not expecting perfection. I am not expecting things to be perfect or for me to do a perfect job, because that truly doesn't exist. And me thinking that other people attain perfection is also fake news, right? So we look at other people and we see what they're doing and we think to ourselves, well, they're doing it the right way. They're doing things in the way that's right. But what we're doing is we are looking at somebody who has just accepted themselves. We are looking at somebody and we are seeing that they have accepted this as good enough. They have told themselves, this is great. I'm going to put this out into the world. Even if that's not their internal dialogue, you see it and you accept it. You see it and you're like, oh, good for them. They're putting their words out in the world. Like, I think about people who show up on Instagram Live or they're on their stories and they're talking, and I used to see that as such a threat, and I used to compare myself and be like, what do they have that I don't? And I'm so insecure and I can't do it right and they're doing it right. Nobody knows what the fuck they're doing at any point in life. We're all just trying to figure it out. And the same goes for the online space. Is like, you see people showing up, writing captions, doing things a certain way, and you keep telling yourself that how you're doing it is wrong. But again, ding, 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 that's imposter syndrome telling you that your way is the wrong way. And you are so used to not trusting yourself that you think that somebody else can tell you how to do it the right way, when in reality, it's just you accepting that whatever you do or produce has the capacity and the potential to be better each time you do it, of course, but that it's good enough right now. It's good enough right now. It can reach somebody right now. It can help somebody right now. And you guys know that I always talk about that in terms of like really trying to overcome imposter syndrome in the beginning of your business, or if you're in an entry level role in your career. And the number one like affirmation or thought that I teach my clients in that way is telling yourself, I know enough now to help one person. I know enough today to help one person today, or to do one task today. And that very thought has helped me show up. It has helped me create programs. It has helped me do so many things. It has helped me sign clients, because before I get on the phone for the sales calls, I tell myself, even if you just help this person a little bit, you are helping them and you are doing your job. And that really also helps me detach, like I think with perfectionism in terms of taking action, it can be really hard because again, we need the action to be perfect and we need to know it has a perfect outcome. And again, if you are neurodivergent, then you have a very all or nothing brain. So you think it has to be perfect or it's not going to have the perfect outcome and then it's not going to be worth it. But you can't have that mindset when you are growing your business online or when you are working your way up in your career. You can't have that thought of it has to be perfect, because perfection doesn't exist. Perfection does not exist in any role, in any job, and everybody is just making their way, that they're just taking one step at a time. And if you just tell yourself, I can take it one step at a time, that is going to be so helpful for you. And I was actually coaching a client about this as well, because she was looking at her business from a very macro standpoint. So from a very zoomed out standpoint, because she was pivoting, starting something new in her business. She was starting a brand new coaching business, and she had already had a very successful one before, but this was in an entirely different niche. And she was telling herself, like, what if this all doesn't work out? Because she was in the beginning stages, right? In terms of creating educational things and doing the content and doing all of that. So she was in the beginning stages of that. And I said, you're looking at this from a macro viewpoint, but you need to go micro. Whenever you feel like there's a lot of all or nothing, what if this all doesn't work out? Is this all for nothing? That is an indication that your brain is just trying to like widen its eyes. It's trying to protect itself because it's experiencing the resistance and the procrastination. So it's trying to protect you. Your brain is trying to tell you, oh my God, like we need to look at this on a grand scale, because like what if this post isn't worth it and doesn't get the response you want, and then your business fails, and then this was all for nothing. Oh my God, we don't want to feel the effects of that. We don't want to be rejected. So you gotta go micro. You gotta go micro, and you have to be like, okay, what's the next step in this? Write another line of this caption. Or your next step is just post this. Just post it. You know, you need to go micro when you are experiencing perfectionism. You need to just put one foot in front of the other and really narrow your focus, because I don't know if you guys have ever heard this about anxiety, but something that you can do when you're feeling very anxious or fearful, when your body is in that sympathetic state. And if you struggle with anxiety or fear, what happens is your body goes into a sympathetic nervous system state. So it goes into this sympathetic state where it's like nervous and anxious, and it basically goes into fight or flight. And a trick that you can do is to widen your eyes, because the brain is a caveman brain, right? So when it's aware of all of its surroundings, that's how it feels safe. And that's what your brain is doing. Your brain is trying to widen its eyes and see everything from like a big standpoint, so it can assess the danger and make sure that you're going to be okay and protect yourself. And that usually means inaction. That usually means protecting yourself by letting yourself sit in the resistance and procrastinating and not actually taking the action, because then taking the action means you're at risk for rejection or failure or what have you, right? So your brain is just widening its eyes. But when you are experiencing perfectionism, you need to go micro. You need to put your blinders on and take one step at a time down the path. You will accomplish so much when you do that. And again, to remember that perfectionism is the armor that protects deeply rooted imposter syndrome, in terms of you are afraid that if you are not the perfect version of yourself, then people are going to see that crusher. They are going to see that part of you that you don't want to be seen. They are going to see that you're not as smart, capable, intelligent, whatever you tell yourself. But those all come from your own thoughts about yourself. Like, I always used to tell myself I was really stupid. Those were the messages that I would receive my entire life. So even though I had gotten into my bachelor's degree with bursaries and scholarships because I had really good grades, or when I got my master's degree and I got accepted and there was a wait list, and when somebody told me that and that I had gotten in, and I was like the youngest by like 6 or 7 years, I was like, a total imposter syndrome. I was like, whoa, they must have made a mistake. Like, they just let anybody into this university. And they were like, nope, there was a wait list and you got on. And I was like, what? Like, it's so interesting because I had so much of that evidence that I wasn't stupid, but because I was so used to telling myself I was stupid and having those thoughts and believing those stories about myself from my past and my childhood, that was another small crusher, that if somebody were to see that I wasn't perfect, or if I handed in something late, or if I didn't do something the correct way or what have you, then people would see, oh, she's actually not as smart as she thinks she is, because that's what I thought about myself. So to recap, perfectionism is just covering up imposter syndrome. And as always, your job is to look what's under the perfectionism. If you weren't perfect, what are you afraid would happen? What are you afraid somebody would see? What are you afraid of people knowing about you? What would that reveal about you? How would you feel about it? And I'm sure you'll find a lot underneath there. And then remembering that when you are going through an experience where perfectionism is coming up for you and you're experiencing a lot of resistance during a task or something like that, go micro. Take one step at a time. Break everything down into chunks, especially if you're neurodivergent and you're doing your all or nothing thinking and you're thinking it needs to be perfect. Break things down as simply as fucking possible. One tiny, teeny step at a time, and let that be good enough. Okay, so another thing that I want to tell you guys is I have a new freebie, and it's called the Worthiness Challenge. And you can go to the link in my show notes, and you can also go to the link in my bio on Instagram at Your Coach Jill, and you can sign up. And that is a 15-day challenge. It's an email challenge, and you will get an email each day with either a journal prompt, an EFT tapping sequence, or a meditation with breath work. And if you are interested in taking this work deeper with me and unwinding that unworthiness wound so you can reduce your self-sabotaging I'm not good enough spinouts that are causing you to procrastinate and hold back, especially holding back in your business and having that business abundance you so desperately want, then you can apply for one-to-one coaching at the link in my show notes. And it's for 6 months. It's the only way you can work with me present time, because the Worthy Woman method is not reopening. As I told you guys last week, it's not reopening its doors until late spring, I would say, because we're doing some really exciting stuff inside the method, and I really want to work on that with my clients. So one-to-one coaching is the only way that you can work with me right now. So you can go to the link in my show notes again and apply for one-to-one coaching, and I'll see you guys next week. I won't see you. You will hear me though, even though I will be in Mexico. You will still hear the episode, and I will talk to you guys then. Bye. Thanks for listening to the From Imposter to Empowered podcast. Head to the show notes to find out how you can take this work deeper with me in one-to-one coaching or in my lifetime group coaching program, The Worthy Woman Method. In the show notes, you'll also find a free 3-day challenge to start the process of overcoming your inner imposter. And once you're done with that, screenshot this episode and share it on Instagram, tagging me at YourCoachJill so we can connect. See you next time.